and what they are doing is un-American. Not everyone starts off life with millions gifted by daddy. In fact, many of America's greatest successes are true rags to riches stories. And more of them are coming. And there are more than you can believe who are immigrants and first generation. I know that because I am the son of two of those immigrants. This Trump administration rule touches all American communities, and it hurts all of us. Immigrants working hard over 5 years to qualify to become American citizens are not eligible for safety net programs. Let me repeat that. Immigrants working hard over 5 years to qualify to become U.S. citizens do not qualify, are not eligible for safety net programs. That's already the law. But the Trump rule wants to put the power to bar your path to become a citizen if your child participates in something as basic as your neighborhood school lunch or nutrition program. This Trump rule weaponizes nutrition, healthcare, and housing. It acts like a ticking time bomb. California has the largest immigrant population in the United States, and it is home to some 10 million immigrants from around the world. And here are two undeniable facts. First, this Trump rule disproportionately impacts Californians. That's obvious. Almost half of all California children have at least one immigrant parent. Secondly, California, in spite of, I say because of, having more immigrants than any other state in America, we create more jobs and graduate more students from college than any other state in America. We also happen to be number one in technology as well as agriculture, in clean energy as well as manufacturing, in tourism as well as entertainment. 10 million immigrants, and we are the economic engine for America. That's no accident. We're going to fight against this rule in court, not just because it's the right thing to do, because it's the economic imperative for California to do. This rule is a job killer. There are estimates that California would lose thousands of jobs. And let me put it in this perspective. This rule creates a strict standard, so strict that if it were applied to U.S. citizens, a substantial portion of people across this country who are U.S. citizens would be considered likely as public charges and not qualify for the services that this administration would like to deny children and working families. As a son of immigrants, I will tell you this Trump rule, the way it targets and attacks immigrants, it is personal. As the Attorney General of the state of California, I will tell you that this Trump rule is unlawful, at least in 3 ways. It violates the equal protection guarantee of the Fifth Amendment. It is arbitrary and capricious against our federal laws. And it is contrary to existing federal law. We went to court today because this rule is unlawful. In California, the economic engine for the nation, we know that we cannot afford to sit back while this administration targets programs that children and families across our state rely on. And we know that welcoming and investing in all of our communities makes our state and our entire nation stronger. We will fight this unlawful rule every step of the way. Y en español, este día, como muchos de los días que hemos visto, otra vez este presidente y esta administración quieren atacar los que solo quieren trabajar, mejorar la vida de sus hijos. Y otra vez California, con el apoyo de nuestro gobernador Gavin Newsom y todos los que ven detrás de mí, vamos también a pelear, a luchar, porque sabemos lo que pasa cuando uno trabaja bien duro. Levantamos el Estado y levantamos el país. Yo lo digo como el Attorney General, como el fiscal general de California, pero más que nada lo digo como hijo de inmigrantes de México. Vamos a luchar. Let me now turn it over to Ms. Alvarez for her remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. Thank you to the Governor and the Attorney General for their leadership on behalf of Californians and families across the country. I'm honored for the opportunity to join you this morning. My name is Mayra Alvarez. I'm the president of the Children's Partnership. We're a statewide advocacy organization that focuses on putting our children first in policymaking. And I joined today to denounce the sweeping changes on long-standing bipartisan immigration policy by the Trump administration. Changes that damage the well-being of millions of children and jeopardize the future of all of us. In California, 4.5 million children, half of our 9 million kids, are part of an immigrant family. Since this administration took over, too many have heard derogatory comments by the nation's leaders about their family background. Too many are bullied because they or their parents were not born in this country. And too many are worried about what may happen if their parent is detained or deported. The finalization of the public charge rule is the latest in a series of xenophobic attacks on immigrant communities by the Trump administration. This rule would base immigration denials on a family's decision to use the very services designed to keep children and their families healthy and financially stable. As advocates for children, we know firsthand policy extends far beyond its intended recipients, and this rule is no exception. This rule is not about making immigrants self-sufficient. Instead, the regulation puts money above values and the wealthy ahead of families who have waited for years to be reunited. Such a shift in policy will hurt the health and safety of our kids, causing an increase in child poverty, worsening health, hunger, and homelessness, and ultimately hurting the ability of our children to develop, to safely attend and thrive in school, and to grow up to be the productive adults we all need them to be. Make no mistake, we're all going to feel this economic hit. The department states it in their own regulatory analysis. Our Medi-Cal providers will feel it, medical supply companies will feel it, grocers in CalFresh, landlords that are in federally supported public housing, they're going to feel it. The long-term viability of our state's economy relies on our children and youth. Children are our future entrepreneurs, our skilled workers, our tax base for a strong economy. And without access to services that support their healthy development, it is our collective well-being that will suffer. We will all feel the impacts of this rule, but it's innocent children that will bear the brunt of it. Children depend on us, the adults in their lives, to provide them with care and safety, not strip them of it. The mere rumor of this change has had a chilling effect on communities across the state and has resulted in further confusion, deepened fears, and disenrollment from public benefits, which means limited access to vital health, nutrition, and other social services for California's kids and families. Reports are telling us that immigrant families are avoiding everyday routine activities, taking their children to school, going to the park, or going to the grocery store. And according to a national analysis, last year, over 150,000 California children dropped from the rolls of Medi-Cal. And research attribute this in part to the confusion, the angst, and the fear intentionally inflicted by the federal administration. A basic tenet of who we are as Americans, of our shared values of family, inclusion, and fairness, is to take care of our children. We call on our nation's leaders to stop playing politics with the lives of children, millions of children and families. The best way to build a strong country is to ensure that every family who lives here has the food, medical care, shelter, and other basics they need to thrive. It's up to each of us, as community members, as Californians, to put our values into action and demand that this administration withdraw the rule and advance just policies that defend and protect the dignity and rights of all children. We ask you to join us in building a better country where we are all safe and valued. Si me permiten unas palabritas en español, por favor, nada más un minuto. Es un honor estar aquí. Soy hija de inmigrantes de México y estar aquí con el gobernador y con el, ¿cómo se dice en español? Fiscal general, gracias. Hoy hablamos de la nueva regla de cargo público y damos atención a los millones de familias que hoy se enfrentan con una decisión difícil de mantener a su familia unida o comprar comida para alimentar a sus hijos. Este es el nuevo ataque de la administración de Trump hacia nuestras familias inmigrantes. Esta regla podría negar la tarjeta de residencia permanente a cualquier persona que utilice los servicios de beneficio que ayudan a niños y familias inmigrantes salir adelante. La regla comenzará a aplicarse el 15 de octubre de este año y no tendrá efecto retroactivo. Pero como han escuchado, nuestros líderes van a discutir esta regla en las cortes y eso podría retrasar o impedir que las reglas nuevas entren en vigor. Es importante que miembros de nuestra comunidad aprendan cómo esta regla puede afectar a sus familias. Les recomendamos que consulten a un abogado antes de tomar cualquier decisión que pueda afectar la salud y el bienestar de su familia. Nuestra organización, como muchas otras basadas en la comunidad, muchas aquí con nosotros, estamos aquí para apoyar y asistirlos. Gracias. Ahora es un honor introducir a nuestro gobernador. It is now my honor to pass the mic over to Governor Newsom. Thank you.
I don't want to, another one, I'm following that, Mr. Attorney General. First of all, let me, who are all of you? I imagine a few of you may be asking, but I think it's incredibly important that you know who's behind us. And you reminded us of the totality of the impact that goes beyond just direct impacts of families, but impacts more broadly this state. And you have a lot of people here representing diversity of this state in every way, shape, or form. And perhaps just briefly, just mention who you're representing and your name, if you could.
Thank you. Carmela Castellano Garcia with the California Primary Care Association, representing community clinics and health centers in the state of California.
Jessica Bartholo with the Western Center on Law and Poverty and also the California Asset Building Coalition.
Ron Fong, California Grocers Association, representing all of the community grocery stores in California.
Jeff Reynoso with the Latino Coalition for Aldi California, representing Latinx Health for our 40% of our state.
Carmela Coyle with the California Hospital Association, representing hospitals throughout the state of California.
Tia Shimada, California Food Policy Advocates. We fight for equity, we fight against hunger.
Ana Iokimedes with Early Edge California, representing the early learning community for children ages 0 to 5.
Mark Alley, your Secretary for Health and Human Services, over health services in the Medicaid program, CalFresh, and the Social Services Department.
Orville Thomas, representing the California Immigrant Policy Center and the California Protecting Immigrant Families Coalition.
Dennis Myers with the California School Board Association, representing school districts and county offices of education throughout the state.
Ann Block with the Immigrant Legal Resource Center.
Andrew Shane with the California Association of Food Banks, representing 41 food banks.
Justin Corcoran, California Medical Association.
Anthony Wright, Health Access California, the statewide healthcare consumer advocacy coalition.
Kathy Sunderling McDonald with the County Welfare Directors Association, representing the 58 County Human Services agencies.
Awesome. Thank you guys, all of you, for being here. It means a lot, and it says a lot, just your presence. And obviously, imagine a number of you, if there are any questions, we'll happily answer them. You know, you stand up here, I'm humbled in one respect. You didn't have to pick up the phone as the governor of California and check in, see where the Attorney General was and what his opinion might be on the issue of public charge. You didn't have to reach out to the leadership of the state and the Assembly and Senate and get a temperature of where they may be. Everybody knew exactly where they stood, united at this moment, united as a state. We are representing the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. As the Attorney General said, now close to 11 million Californians, foreign-born, 27% of the state foreign-born, a majority minority state. We, every single day, proudly are practicing pluralism. That is a point of pride. And as a consequence, it is a point of principle that we stand up at a moment like this as a state and assert ourselves and protect not only the values of the state, but the remarkable diversity that we represent within this state. I never thought, however, I would start my week defending Bald Eagle and end my week defending the Statue of Liberty. What an incredible week in America. What a remarkable moment in our history. But this moment, as it relates to the public charge, is not necessarily unique in our history either. it's very familiar history, particularly for Californians. 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act was established. The framework to which we are debating the public charge emanates from the Chinese Exclusion Act. That came out of discussions here, the bigotry here against the Chinese. You had a guy by the name of Dennis Kearney. Some of you heard me talk about Mr. Kearney, an immigrant himself of Irish descent, who began and ended every speech by whatever else we do, he said, the Chinese must go. You saw at the time, in the 1880s, all kinds of illustrations that were done of virtual walls that were being built around America to keep the Chinese out. Came out of San Francisco Bay Area. Here we are, generations later, having gone through that moment of extreme bigotry and sort of pull ourselves up and been pulled back in more contemporary terms in the 1990s with Prop 187. How familiar is the public charge to Californians in that contemporary context? We pulled ourselves up and we fought back. That resiliency is California, and that's what gives me optimism, despite all the headwinds of the moment. We persevere, we reconcile, and we ultimately renounce the kind of bigotry, the kind of xenophobia that is front and center in discussions and debates like this. I thought the Attorney General was right about the Trump administration having issues with immigrants, but I think he could have been even more pointed, and forgive me, Mr. Attorney General, by saying he has a particular problem with brown people, not even immigrants. It's noted we're not talking about illegal immigrants as it relates to the public charge. We're talking about legal immigrants. We are, by the way, talking about, yet again, family separation, because what is a public charge? At the end of the day, it's a mother deciding whether or not to get benefits for their children, for her child, or being separated from that child at fear of being deported by an individual that uses this public charge to make an arbitrary determination. That's family separation. It's remarkable what this administration is up to. It's insidious beyond words, and California will have none of it. And so, without belaboring this, I just want to thank the incredible leadership in the state, the extraordinary work that the Attorney General and his deputies are doing at this moment, the collaborative nature to which they've not only engaged the leadership in the executive and legislative branches, but now have reached out to other attorney generals across the country. And I imagine you'll be hearing more about other states that will also join this cause and continue to fight the good fight in our courts. And so with that, I just want to again thank all of you behind me and everybody here that is assembled today, and we are happy to answer any questions on this topic, please. And if you have others, we'll assemble more privately.
Either the governor or the attorney general, what has the administration or has the Department of Justice thought about anything that the state can do to forestall some of the loss of people signing up for these public services in the interim? As you mentioned, people already are not signing up for things like Medi-Cal and food stamps and Section 8.
Forgive me, Mr. You guys are the experts. You're experiencing with a chilling effect. The whole point of this is fear. The whole point is to create anxiety and create that chilling effect that has it's already had its intended impact. You already are seeing a decline in people that are getting supports that they're legally entitled to, anti-poverty support to keep them out of poverty. And we've seen that for over a year now, these trend lines. And I don't know if any of you want to fill in the blank, because you've been providing us very detailed information about some of these rules.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Mr. Attorney General, again, Kathy Sunderling McDonald. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the County Welfare Directors Association. Counties administer the CalFresh or food stamp program here in California. We also run the Medicaid, Medi-Cal eligibility for people across the state, 13+ million. And the data are hard to tease out, but we have heard for about 2 years now, every time there's been coverage of a possible rule coming forward, people will call and they will say, please remove me from the rolls, or please withdraw that application that I have filed. And so it's just built over time. There was some discussion over the past week as we had heard that the rule was released from OMB, was going to be released publicly any time, that some researchers were thinking maybe we'd seen that kind of play out. And again, anecdotally this week, as the rule came out, we have been hearing, again, people disenrolling and calling. These could be individuals for whom public charge does not actually apply, may never apply. So what we've tried to do is work very closely with our partners at the Health and Human Services agencies and the 2 departments that we work closely with to send messages about who to talk to legal experts, talk to people who understand this rule, which is very confusing and obviously is changing very quickly potentially, to understand, does it potentially apply to me? Am I okay if I use these services? Because the worst thing would be for people who are hungry, for people who are ill, to withdraw themselves or their children from these programs when they really need it, especially if it's not going to affect them because of the way that public charge is applied.
So is the only tool public messaging then at this point?
I mean, I could certainly step back and let the others say, but public messaging is an extremely important part of the toolkit, I would say, making sure that people understand the rule doesn't actually take effect until mid-October, and it's prospective. So that hopefully will give people time to be able to consult with someone who does know what they're doing, and there's information on the Department of Social Services website for the state of California. They have contracted with, probably not enough because I think they're very busy, so we should talk about that, trying to find people who've been trained to be able to consult with them and figure out. Obviously, tools like the lawsuit that's filed today, which we support, will help hopefully to forestall the rule going into effect, and again, give time for people to have those conversations and figure out what is best for themselves and their families.
And I want to make sure I look at my team to be sure, but I suspect pretty quickly we're going to be filing for a temporary injunction to make sure that the rule does not take effect. And so stay tuned, but I believe we will be going into court to try to keep this rule from ever applying or ever standing in our state. And I also should mention, I suspect others can mention more directly, certainly Governor and our Secretary of our Healthcare Services. There are services that we provide as state that have nothing to do with federal resources and federal programs. Please, probably the most important thing we can tell folks, know the facts and know your rights. And may I just suggest that there are all these organizations you just heard announced. There are a number that you know of, the nonprofit organizations that do day in, day out the work of supporting and representing families, hardworking immigrant families. Turn to them. They know who's reliable. Please don't, and I don't mean to besmirch anyone, but please don't go to private attorneys right now to get counsel. Save your money. There are enough good organizations that won't charge you to direct you to somebody who can help you. And if you do need an attorney, they'll know who the good attorneys are. Save your money. And I would, Governor, if I may, I'd like to put a call out to our religious leaders. You see most of these immigrants at least once a week. And I know some families visit your place of worship more than just once a week. Please, help us communicate to your parishioners. Help us communicate to those who visit your house of worship what people should know. Let's not let folks panic, and let's not have people denying their children services they paid for with their taxes. Let's fight this.
Do you want to amplify as well? Thank you, Mark Alley, with Secretary of Health and Human Services, and also the son of 2 immigrant parents to this country and an extended family who has also been asking a lot of these questions that we're addressing today, and proud to be in a state with a governor, an attorney general, and the wonderful group of people behind that don't look at this as reframe it as a public charge issue and really protecting our most important public asset. The young people who depend on the services that I have the privilege of running departments that oversee. To get more specific, there are groups of federally funded programs that are not impacted by the public charge. Many of the emergency services on the medical side do not count as a public charge. The Children's Health Insurance Program that covers low-income children do not count as a public charge. I think it's very important to note that women who are pregnant can continue to get the services they need to have a healthy pregnancy, and not just up until they deliver, but 60 days after. And it was already stated that this October 15th date is an important one, and it's not retroactive or retrospective, right? So people who have appointments today, who have their children lined up to get the health care they need to go to school healthy, or themselves to get that physical that they need, or their diabetes medications, now is not the time to call your clinic and say, let's cancel that appointment on September 25th or whichever day it is. It's the day to continue going and use your clinics, your services, your hospitals as an asset. The door must be even wider today than it has been. We also know that the Department of Social Services is just last week investing over $1 million more and hopefully more to support those lawyers and attorneys in the community who, as our Attorney General and many others have spoken about, really do have the right information to help individuals, their families, understand the context of what will and won't be included as a public charge. We are continuing to improve our messaging, developing fact sheets that we want to empower community clinics, our faith-based organizations, our grocery stores, our food banks, our hospitals, to really communicate out. And communication is a key tool at the moment. The chilling effect only becomes worse if we don't methodically and effectively explain very clearly to folks what their rights are, what is at stake, and ensure that we create the pathways through Health and Human Services departments, whether on the health side or the social services side, to continue to provide these services.
General, could you go through the details of the lawsuit, where it was filed, and what relation, if any, it has to other suits that have been filed on the same matter?
These administrative rules, these administrative actions taken by the administration follow a pattern. One, they try to change federal law through executive action, which you cannot do. And that's one of the reasons we've had so much success against the Trump administration in court, because they keep trying to change the law by breaking the law. And you can't do that. They're doing that in this case as well. They're also using a very worn pattern of more speechifying, using optics versus facts. And so by talking about public charges, they're trying to make people believe that these are folks who are using welfare benefits that aren't working, that don't qualify, that are essentially being a drag on our economy and consuming taxpayer dollars. When in fact, most of the evidence that's out there will tell you these folks work really hard, pay taxes, they have status, and so that's another pattern we've seen. And finally, when it comes to the issues directly related to the law, one, they're acting in a way that you're not allowed to. Just because you sit in the Oval Office doesn't mean you don't have to respect the rules. You're not above the law. You got to do it the same way. There's something called due process. There's a guy in the Oval Office who just doesn't seem to understand that that applies to people, whether or not you're a U.S. citizen. And so they violate their own statutes, and they violate the process under which you can make changes. That's why it's arbitrary and capricious. They violate, as I mentioned, the Constitution, because they treat different people differently based on profiles. And at the same time, as I've mentioned, they were violating laws, they're exceeding their authority, and what they're essentially doing is ignoring what their own obligations are under the law and acting differently. And so, once again, it's a very worn pattern we've seen from this administration. They're not very patient. They try to do things in a hurry. They got some pretty nasty people underneath them writing these rules. And as vicious and vile as they are, we still have institutions that require them to follow the law.
And in terms of the other states and jurisdictions that have filed suit against this, is completely separate, or what's the relation there?
So there are likely going to be any number of lawsuits that are ultimately filed in this case. Ours is one. We have with us the states of Maine, Oregon, Pennsylvania, the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., joining our lawsuit. There will be at least one or two other lawsuits filed by states, and we know that there will be a number of actions filed by individuals and organizations that represent a lot of these immigrant families. And so you'll have quite a few lawsuits.
Can you expand on that, though? Why file differently here than the 13-state filing that was already out there, Washington, Virginia, and others?
We want to succeed, and we each have different circumstances. No one can say they have 10 million people in their state who are immigrants. No one can say they have the number of children who would be impacted. No one could say, like California, how many jobs we would lose. No one can say how day in, day out, we benefit from the work done by these immigrant families. And no one can say they have more people who will lose a chance to become U.S. citizens than California if this rule were to move forward. But each and every state has a basis to try to stop the illegal action by this administration. Each and every one of those organizations and individuals has standing to go in and try to stop this action. So you don't have to wait for one court to say it. You have a right to have your day in court, whether it's in California, New York, Washington State, or anywhere else.
Is this number 56?
I believe so.
Governor, can you talk a little bit, you guys have spoken about the economic impact that immigrants have in California. As you know, this week we've heard increasing talk about a recession coming to the United States. How concerned is your office about a recession in general? What is California, is there anything we can do to forestall?
Well, we're, I think on a consistent basis, more than 20% of the nation's net job creation. We have an outsized economy just shy of $3 trillion. So in every way, the American economy is substantially impacted by how California is doing. We are doing very well. California continues to do better than most states. We've averaged 3.7% GDP growth over the last 5 years on average. We've significantly outperformed the nation in GDP growth over the last few years. So we continue to be optimistic, but not naive, and I think that was reflected in last year's budget. We were close to 90% of that surplus was set aside to pay off debt, reserves, or just for one-time purposes. That is almost without precedent in terms of its fiscal construct in the last few decades. That was very intentional because we're not naive about the headwinds. We're not naive about the white water in front of us and the fact that a 10-year period of expansion likely will face a different reality in the near future. So we're monitoring it, and I will just close by saying this. The most important stat for us is sales tax. We monitor sales tax as a disproportionate proxy to where the economy may be going. So I offer that as a point of consideration when you're looking into the future. That's the crystal ball that tends to create more sensitivity for us.
How's it doing?
Consumer spending. So there's been some modest decline, but it's we're not feeling deep pressure, deep anxiety, but watch that space, as Rachel Mahal may say.
The damage has been done. Basically, the community is living in fear, and I'm talking about the immigrant community. What will be the plan to rebuild the trust? California is ready to protect our community, and also if you can answer that in Spanish too.
Better Spanish.
No.
I'll do the English, you'll do the
okay,
Spanish.
Yeah, no.
No, I mean,
Okay, go
it's
ahead.
all about trust, and that's what community's built on. That's the business we're in, is trying to restore trust and community, and trying to bind people together. And so that's our job. That's our job. And I think it's demonstrable. Look behind me. You want a trust building exercise? I think this is it. We're united. We have our diverse community's backs. We've got one of the top litigators in the country. that's going to fight in the courts, and we're going to fight in public opinion, and we're going to make sure we're in every diverse community in the state getting the right information out. We've been at this for some time. We put a lot of money in the budget for outreach, for education, for pro bono legal services, so people don't have to go out of pocket, as the Attorney General said, to get legal support. We anticipated this. This is, as you suggest, been a slow 2-year roll. Last October, it was a little more prescriptive, and we've been waiting for that announcement, but we haven't been just sitting around. So it's a big state, a lot of work to do. We need a lot of partners, but I feel very confident the state is more resilient than most because of the leadership.
Governor? Oh, I'm sorry.
Primeramente, uno se tiene que fijar quién está aquí con este anuncio. No solo es un hijo de inmigrantes mexicanos, es el gobernador del estado de California, la persona más poderosa del estado más poderoso de los Estados Unidos, que está aquí, que quiere que estemos aquí juntos. Y todo el pueblo que está detrás de mí, no solo son los que abogan para los inmigrantes, estas no son organizaciones y asociaciones que solo tratan con familias migrantes. Tenemos los representantes de los hospitales de California, que no son manejados por inmigrantes. Tenemos líderes de todos aspectos del comercio de los estados de California aquí. Estamos como socios aquí, porque sabemos bien que las familias migrantes son nuestros socios. Y eso es algo diferente que lo que se ve en Washington, D.C. Si uno entiende eso, entonces, como dijo el gobernador, tenemos que tener confianza, tenemos que ser optimistas, porque esto lo superamos. Y con esto termino. Yo sé que si mis padres estuvieran aquí hablando de qué es lo que ven ellos, cómo sienten ellos, cuál es el temor que sienten, en términos del temor que han tenido que sentir las familias migrantes en su vida, esto es malo, pero no en comparación a lo que estaban experimentando antes de poder huir el país, antes de ver fallecer, fusilado, un ser querido, antes de no tener comida que darle a sus hijos. Estos son retos. Este es un reto artificial empezado por el presidente de los Estados Unidos contra las familias migrantes. Pero es otro reto. Es lo que hacen las familias migrantes. Por eso este país es tan fuerte, porque los migrantes saben cómo superar esos retos. Yo lo digo otra vez, no solo porque vamos a luchar con ellos como socios contra este reto, lo digo como hijo, que por la primera vez pudo entrar por las puertas de una universidad, porque esos inmigrantes, esos padres, abrieron la puerta. Ellos no pudieron, pero su hijo sí. Así va a ser. Así que solo un reto, y por favor, no dejan que este reto cierre los ojos de lo que usted puede hacer con sus derechos y con el ejército que tenemos detrás de nosotros.
En medio del temor se toman malas decisiones, ¿no? Y mencionó que si voy a recurrir a las iglesias o a diferentes centros para evitar, ¿no?, que se tome ventaja de los inmigrantes, sobre todo en este miedo que sienten ellos ahora.
Nuestros sacerdotes, nuestros líderes religiosos, este es el momento de pararse, de defender las familias. Tienen ustedes el hogar que protege a todos. Por favor, hablen, párense, por favor, para representar las familias que cada domingo vienen y visitan a la casa del Señor. Por favor, este es el tiempo de estar levantando los brazos y diciendo que no basta aquí en California.
And thank you, folks. I think I have time for one more question, Governor. We have like 2 minutes.
Just one quick question, Governor. You just worked for the first 6 months of your time in office to expand the use of public health and wellness programs, and I'm wondering if you're worried that this will unwind the progress that your first budget makes.
There's no doubt this is a punch to the gut. No state, as the Attorney General said, more impacted than California, more people impacted, more children and families impacted. But we knew years ago what we were getting with this administration, and we'll continue to do more and do better and continue a good fight. And so I'm not worried in the long run. I'm worried in the short term because you've got more than enough evidence to suggest people have already been hurt by the anticipation of this rule. And so now it's incumbent upon us to make sure it never goes into effect. And we'll continue to build the architecture around that reality, and the state will continue to do more than any other state to promote those policies and those values and continue to provide the kind of resources that our community deserves.
You said the president has a particular problem with brown people, not just immigrants. He's a white supremacist.
I'm not going there. I know that's it's been the question we're asking a lot of folks, but he says a lot of things that make a lot of people that do identify with that term very happy. But the continued assaults on the Hispanic community is just, I mean, it's not even in question. It's just self-evident. And we've seen it over and over. But to see it, the same week after a raid in Mississippi, to see it the same week after El Paso, and then the public charge, connect some dots. I mean, why is it even an open question what's going on in this country and what's going on with this administration and what they're trying to do and who they're trying to blame? And, again, this is, forgive me, but I grew up in this environment in the 1990s. I lived through it. I said it and I'll continue to say it. So many ways America in 2019 is California in 1994. But we worked through it, and we will work through it as a nation, and that's why I'm optimistic in the long term that America will be stronger and more united, but we have to work through this moment in history.